Well, I think your analysis was very straight line. History doesn't run in a straight line.
Kid, you cannot tell your neighbor he is stealing ducks when you are stealing funds.
As High Commissioner, I was wrong. As Charandas Prasad, I reacted naturally how any person would have.
I did not come here for that kind of abuse. I did not come here for that kind of abuse. If you're going to go down that road, I'll walk off.
But it's all okay once they're talking. If they were talking, I could not have been here today.
You got ADHD.
I got
that. Calm down.
I think I've done enough in terms of taking our team out of trouble from losing.
Come on, Lou Taylor. That's good. I'm reading the script now, and the first person that comes to my mind to play a detective,
Yes,
but
the guy
an
who's critic.
erratic
Mikhail
detective,
Rodriguez.
is Mikhail Rodriguez.
Why an African slap an Indian? Why a man and slap a woman? Look, girl, how you deal with that? You deal with that.
We must encourage platforms like this because it brings together different people and allows for discussions to take place in our country on a multiplicity of fundamental issues.
Kingdom, you apologizing for something you think I did is wrong. I don't want you to do that, and you should not have done that. Hello, a pleasant Monday evening to you. Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. Thanks for being with us once again at the beginning of the week. This is the Freddie Kissoon Show with co-host Leonard Craig. We do not have a guest this evening. That's because we are continuing with our new format. Leonard Craig said that people want to have our interpretation of things. So the past 3-4 shows, Leonard and I have been rapping with an invited colleague, in which the colleague joined us to rap. We're not interviewing the colleague. So this evening we have no stranger to the program and no stranger to the Guyanese Society, Mr. Ruel Johnson, a well-known novelist and literary personality and current consultant to the Ministry of Education.
Culture to sport.
With emphasis, as he told me, on culture. So, Leonard, welcome to the program again. And Ruel, nice to being here for the 4th time.
I realize it's 4 times.
Yes, this is the 4th time. So, you're old head on the program.
Yeah.
So, we are just going to look back at 2024 and we're just going to have a free flow among ourselves. Wednesday, we may have a guest. So, let's start the program by asking Ruel about what were the low moments. We'll come to the high moments of 2024. And I know he knows Niger Hughes well, and I just thought I'd ask him about the new political dispensation in Guyana. That's the new leadership of the AFC. And of course, you know, the AFC and co-host Leonard Craig is in a current confrontation. If you read the Chronicle today, I thought that was unlike Craig. The man has don't let me get in. Well, I mean, the man, I'm not talking about Craig, I'm not talking about the person Craig is writing. But we may have Ruel take on what is happening with Craig and the AFC in this back and forth. Of course, I did say last week that I thought it was a Jambi Lash AFC put in Craig, but Craig is saying you get killed when you get a Jambi Lash, and he isn't dead as yet. He's alive and fighting. So, Ruel, over to you.
Yeah, well, on a point of correction, I'm attached to the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that. Oh, education in the previous government.
In the previous, yeah. So, because that portfolio fell under that.
Yeah, Freddie stuck a little in the past. Yeah.
Probably not the only one. Yeah.
It's not the whole country.
So, where do you want to begin? As this is a gaffe you get in.
where do you want to begin? All of us were once attached to the AFC. All of us felt disappointed 2015, 2020. Now, someone we knew well, Nigel Hughes, is UFC leader. What is he hoping to achieve? For me, it's been disappointing since he became leader. He hasn't said anything about that nasty press release the AFC's put out on Craig. But, well, after you, Leonard, just go.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, you said it's a new dispensation, and I tend to disagree.
Okay.
In the sense that, if anything,
It's the same old people.
it's the same people, and in fact, we've had it's a sort of a decimation of what the AFC once was. As you said, all three of us at one point were attached in some ways. Leno,
Was a big man there.
more deeply as part of the executive. I never was formally
A
part.
big man there.
But clearly, moral and in many ways technical support was given to the FC, and it's significant that what you've had is sort of a stripping away of this sort of corollary of what I believe to be competent people, and what's left is, I mean, you have the titles, etc. But what you have is, I think, it's a paucity of policy competence more than anything else. I mean, we have other issues to deal with, etc. But I think if a party, one that is serious about governing, but more important, that has had the opportunity in the driver's seat of the executive, and 5 years after that, has zero credible policy perspectives, policy positions, policy, and the plans that come with it, then for me that is more telling than anything else. So it's a question of not so much a new dispensation as why it is that the old dispensation, after all this experience, both in Parliament as well as in government, 5 years in government, and longer than was supposed to be, it's so poor when it comes to policy. It's like catch as you can, and what you've noticed, and people don't comment enough, and this deals with both APNU and the FC, PNC and the FC, is that in 2020, in January 2020, after a great deal of what we call labor, and was effectively a 5-year executive gestation period, what was birthed was a booklet that was called Decade of Development. There's no reference to Decade of Development in any of the policies. So if that was supposed to be the manifesto, if they were in government, right? If that was supposed to be, and I know you could probably put it on this, if that was supposed to be your manifesto when you're in government, why are you not referring to it at this point in time? And why is it? I think the key thing about the AFC in particular is that I think it's a deliberate strategy, is that it has been campaigning as if it were campaigning in 2011 or 2006, as if it's a new party. And you sort of fell into that trap, but it's a new dispensation. But the party has been in government. So that's my take on the emergence. I think it's largely theatre. I think it's theatre geared to treat it as a new party when it was deeply involved in everything in government, from the signing of the oil contract to the fiasco of trying to rig the elections in 2020.
Okay, we'll come to your take on Nigel Hughes. We'll come to your take. Let me see. Let me hear if Leonard has recovered from the Jumbie lash.
Freddie, you call something a jumbie lash if it got merit.
No, if it got force.
Right. Well, what gives it force is merit.
Yeah.
And if it is unmeritorious,
it's not a jumbie
it is
lash.
not a jumbie lash. And the nonsense that AFC put out there, and again, I want people to read my column today. Remember, I got a front seat in AFC executive to this day. Front seat. Anything that happened in there and I want to know, I could know. That's as much as I'm going to say.
There's arrogance
And
or pomposity?
a little of both. When you come to me with arrogance, I coming back at you. And I'm further saying that press release that AFC put out.
John Bilash.
That you won't call. 3/4 of the people in the executive had no knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of people got together, wrote the press release and released it to the press, then send it in a WhatsApp group to the AFC leadership. And I'm telling you now, they had controversy over it. Mm-hmm. People were asking why y'all put out such nonsense, but it is done gone. They can't take it back. Yeah. And if they are decent, they're gonna walk back their comments and they're gonna take it back. But
people don't apologize in this country.
I doubt whether these people are decent. I don't know what's the term, Freddie, but I am not litigious.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're suing them on the last program and say after consultation the family you may sue. And I ask you not. No.
That is not off the table, but I'm just saying.
Take that off the table and throw it away.
I am just saying
in politics we shouldn't sue.
The facts are so.
All right, the kitchen they gotta take the heat.
Yeah.
So what you term a jambilash is just fantasy.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, I began by commenting on the paucity of policy competence, and that jambilash was a response to a column that he did.
Yeah.
Pointing out that very same thing.
Yeah, that thing said that right? Didn't know anything about oil.
And so what you had was a reactionary thing that it isn't the case where it said, no, we have, Mr. Craig is wrong, we have X, Y, and Z policy. Mm-hmm. This is what we developed when we were
I'm glad
in
you said Z. People Guyanese having Z.
Yeah, that's American shit. Mm-hmm. So this is what we had when we were in opposition, leading up. This is our manifesto in 2006. This is how we evolved in 2011. This is what we did in 2015 as part of the coalition. And this is what happened in government. And this is where we are. And another thing, the AFC has been trying to extract itself from the PNC and the legacy of what happened in 2020. But there is no AFC in Parliament. There's no PNC in Parliament. There hasn't been PNC in Parliament for a long time. There's APNU plus AFC. I think so. They're a collective. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The AFC, I mean, there's been obscurity about the status of the Commingsburg Accord or lack thereof, or the new accord. But for all intents and purposes, it's Bati and Po, as we say in Guyana. The problem.
You watch your language.
Well, this is not easy. But the problem is, and this is a larger socio-political issue, is that the PNC has historically been both PNC core but not PNC, in which you have had a sort of a parasitic organization class overlay on the PNC. There's always directly the PNC. You call them the Creole middle class. Lloyd Best, categorically, from Trinidad, they would be classed into what Lloyd Best would call Afro-Saxons. What's happened now is that there's been, when it was up in the AFC, there was both the separation with the PNC, but also the formal political alliance. The PNC as a core, with its clear ethnic base, has always been the party to take the blame for the excesses of the past. When really the PNC as its core, this is regular, ordinary people, right? They had nothing to do with it. All you had is a set of class interests that were controlling the body of the PNC masses, but never really able to take blame. I think a lot of those people now, as a class, have now been concentrated in the AFC. and what they've been trying to do is separate themselves from the actions, what took place in 2020. See that there was a reaction. People were talking about, oh, you shouldn't go back in the past to the 1980s and stuff like that. I have disagree. I disagree to the point wherein I agree to the point wherein the past is, as some I can't remember the philosopher said, the past is really actually past, right? And Shakespeare in one of his plays said the past is prologue, which means it's part of the story. But we don't have to go back to the past. There was something that happened in 2020 that was fundamental to the health of what should be and what should always be a thriving democracy. And there were people who were responsible for that injury or that attempted injury. And those people are both with the PNC and they're with AFC at present. And they have yet to explain credibly what the thing. And I'll come to Leno on because I keep referring to this fundamental thing of the statements of Paul. And I think it was relevant in 2020, and it will be relevant coming up to the elections this year. And that has to do with the basic receipts of the democratic process, which is the statements of Paul. And I'll ask you, Leno, thing. That was one of the key controversies leading up that took part in 2020. You were an AFC senior person. You were there. You put up front, which I both condemn and commend you for, and at least you had the courage. But I've known you for a while, both within the context of the AFC and you know my father and all that, right? I don't get a sense that you have seen the collected statements of Paul, even in your elevated position. Because if you had, I don't believe you would have been out front there, being slaughtered by the press. And that is, for me, forget everything else. Forget about competence, forget about credibility in a general sense. My take is if it is that a group of people, and there was a conspiracy to do so, can engage in a conspiracy to thwart the fundamental will of the people, then what happens is that everything else is off the table. Corruption, considers competence in government. If you could thwart the fundamental will of the people and do so, and then deny it to the public, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, then you could do anything, right? So yeah, but I'll ask you directly, have you seen, and this is something I believe that...
Dominic Gasson said they never saw the statement of Paul.
And this is Dominic as somebody with a sense of credibility. If it is that I know that this man, get a group of us, and I know that this man is a weak link, because in the party deliberations and stuff like that, we might push the envelope, but the man said, no, we're not going beyond this thing. If I, as somebody who's involved in something nefarious, I will not tell this man. I won't show a thing. But it is impossible to think or to believe that this fundamental thing, this fundamental receipt of governance, that people, everybody within an executive body, in which their interests are at stake, only letting this other side see the SOPs. There was an electoral campaign machinery. Some group of people had to have seen the SOPs. These are the receipts that say, and I do not believe, one, that the AFC executive as a whole did not see it. I certainly think that Leno would not have been privy to it. I certainly think that Dominic would not have been privy to it. But the rest of the AFC executive, who were trumpeting, David Patterson said he saw the SOPs. And they comported with what Mingo was thinking. So even the claim that the AFC categorically did not see the SOPs was contradicted by a current executive member of the AFC. Fast forward to now. The position that the new leadership of the AFC use did not see was not in the position to look at the SOPs is bullshit. This is one, you have a member of your party's executive who's a current then government minister then, who said, yes, I saw the SOPs and they comport with what Mingo was putting forward. You can't now say they don't matter. There's no other more fundamental receipt of the will of the people than the statements of Paul. And I'm going to write an article explaining why that is.
Let me say this. The Dominic Gaskin would have been accurate that the statement of Paul was not available to the larger AFC executive.
Yeah.
In fact, on the night of the election, when statement of polls were coming back, we had a system where all the polling agents would have sent a photograph of their statement of poll to a certain WhatsApp number as they completed.
Yeah.
And then I remember AFC had a room of about 8 to 10 people dealing with different areas, who's uploading the statement of poll to a central database, as well as putting them in a tabulated form.
Spreadsheet.
And it was coming nice at the beginning of the night. and then suddenly it stopped coming.
Yeah.
And then we start calling and I heard AFC leaders cussing up. How did the information not come in? What going on?
Yeah.
I think that was the point at which the realization dawned on whomever handled the information first.
Yes.
So that feed that kept coming to us, that ceased, I believe it was deliberate.
Oh yeah, no, I have no doubt.
And you mentioned the name David Patterson, saying that he saw.
Yeah.
If there is anyone who would have seen the SOPs, it would have been David Patterson. Because he was involved at that level. I often tell people in an election campaign structure, people work in silos more than you think.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I am given the task to make sure all flags are procured, set up and posted in certain specific or strategic areas on the post, whatever.
That's your job.
That's what I do. I don't... The moment you start looking left and right for other information on what else is going on in the campaign, you're going to fail. The moment you do that, you're going to fail. And so as once you down your head in the campaign, you're certain to not be aware of a lot of things that is happening.
Yeah.
And for example, somebody's in charge of security, they can't be looking at too much of what in the news and this and that and all of that. They got to focus. If they don't, things are going to happen. They are going to fail.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So the silo in which people operate during an election is extremely, extremely deep.
Yeah, but I would say this. I don't believe that silo. I got that silo mechanism with relation to what they call logistical issues, right? But when it comes to analytical issues, there has to be a core. And,
sure.
And that core really should be a concentration of the executive. And if the executive, parts of the executive, including somebody as important as Dominic Gaskin, who's a minister and who's an extremely intelligent man, and who, out of all of that, should have been entrusted, if nothing else, with that information because he's the president's son-in-law. Right? No, I mean, there's several qualifying things. He's an intelligent man. He's a founding member of the AFC. He is astute businessman who works with numbers. He was a minister. But out of all of that, and a thing of trust, this is somebody who's close familiarly to the executive, right? So all those tick-box things should have said, this person would have been trusted with this information. Not only was the person not entrusted with that information, but that person was the one person during that time to say, you know what, from what I've seen externally, and this is in comport with the EU observers, the Commonwealth observers, CARICOM, etc., and sensible people reading the thing, was that this claim that you won was false. Now, with the SOPs thing, I can give you a personal thing of why it was clear that it was a conspiracy. About a couple of days, I think around March 8th, if I recall correctly, so I think it was a Sunday or Monday, a group of us in the small parties realized that something was off. And we decided among us that the only remedy we had was to ensure that, the rule is that the statements of poll have to be put outside of polling places and available to the public. So any member of the public can go and see. And there's a reason for that, right? Transparency, democracy, etc. We went, I remember I took Lower East Coast. And we went about, me and a friend of mine, went about 10 polling stations, Pleasance, Bladen Hall, Kitty, and all those areas. And I remember when we went, one of the first ones we went to Pleasance, it was in Pleasance. And the school that was the polling place, the gate was locked. The gate was locked. And the security...
That's after right.
No.
8, you say, around the 8. Okay.
No, the date. But this was afternoon. The gate was locked. And the SOPs, was publicly thing, was about 300 meters. So you couldn't see it. Right? 300 meters in. So we asked the guard, we've come to take pictures of this. Then, right? We have a vested interest in this stuff. Right? As a member of a small party. The guard said, no, the guard said, not a thing. It was a female guard. She said she was instructed not to let anybody in. That was replicated at several sites. And it was one security company that rose up under the coalition, and guard after guard said that the instructions from the superiors was that nobody was allowed to access those SOPs. We eventually went to, I think, Campbellville Secondary, and we convinced the guard to let us in. And we went in. She said, it's between us, don't. And there were several polling sites in that compound. And when we went to a couple of them, somebody had crudely ripped off the SOPs. Some were completely gone, but whoever was assigned to do so had just dashed some on the ground. Because I don't think they understood what the assignment was.
They were probably just told to go and get right. And you picked up some.
So, but we got pictures. I still have pictures on my phone, and I'm doing a comprehensive article of those SOPs that we did get and shared in the group. But what you had clearly was a centralized conspiracy to deny the public the legal and constitutional right to have access to the SOPs. And that tied in with the very clear bingo that went on. That in which people, whoever the returning officer said was on an SOP, was that, and not what everybody else should have had. And to date, it is notable that neither the APNU nor the AFC has produced a single SOP in their thing. And when that happens, it isn't just that you are fooling the public. what you're doing is two things. One, you are basically calling your staff, the 2,300 plus people who worked for you on polling day, you're calling them crooks. Because you call them corruptible. You're saying that they were involved in a conspiracy to thing. But there's another thing, and this is important. You're also co-corrupting the people that supported you, the 200,000 plus people. You're giving them a choice. You're saying, one, we're telling the truth, but you have to believe us, despite us not providing evidence of this thing. Or two, we both know that we're lying. And this has to do with, and this is both the previous leadership of the AFC and the PNC, and the current leadership of the AFC and the PNC. Right? Granger, Norton, Ramchatan, Hughes, Trotman, that triumvirate.
Patterson.
So I'm talking about the leader, right? So you're saying that we're lying. But work along with us. We're lying for a reason.
Before Leonard coming, before we go to your take on one of the big issues of 2024, I hope people who know Henry Jeffrey would take this program after tomorrow and force him to listen to what you were saying, because Jeffrey claimed that every region, he listed every region except Region 8, in which the PPP rigged the election in some region to the extent of 57%. So if you listen
Jeffrey wrote that.
Yeah, Henry Jeffrey, and I responded 3 times in the column. 3 columns a day in that. So if people listening to you, it means those orders to lock the gate came from the PPP officials. Not, because if the PPP corrupted the election in 9 of the 10 regions, I don't know, he left out Region 8.
Yeah.
And the rigging was about, in some regions, 57%. Then it is the PPP who tell the people lock the gate. Anyway, that's why
Linden was rigged too.
He didn't come.
Anyway, let me because I was involved, especially at the recount front and center.
Yes.
And let me say this. I don't, Freddie, no, I often say this. I don't believe in talking about what I would call party proprietary information. But I am going to venture in this area because I think it's important for the records.
Yeah.
Eureka!
After the election and the recount was agreed to, and as I'm saying, I was on the AFC executive, and the AFC executive was not privy to any SOP, apart from, as I said, those 4 sets.
Yeah, just as a distinction, the AFC executive as a body.
As a body, AFC. Most of us in the AFC,
as opposed to people who were on the AFC.
That is what, and I said to you, and I said to you earlier, that if there was anyone that would have been privy to that, it would have been David Patterson, because he was operating at that level.
Okay.
There is at least one other person who I suspect had knowledge of what the SOPs were, but I don't want to throw wrong names here. But I can tell you.
Hold on. What is the name?
What's that a crime?
Yeah, I understand.
Why are you protecting this person?
I'm not protecting anybody. Just hold on.
Johnson, that's him. Please,
hold on, man. Let me just continue.
No.
I allow you.
You can't do viewers. I suspect a name may.
I allowed you to speak. Just let me continue, man. It got to be that I'm going somewhere.
I think you're going somewhere.
The question will still come back, but let's go.
All right. Yeah. So, I was very, very close to Ramchatan at the time.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, in my own estimation, knowledge and calculation, he was out of the loop. He probably came in afterwards.
Yeah.
So who was in the loop? Call the names. Who was in the loop?
So
David Palston, of
let
course.
me move on.
Yeah.
Then the recount was ordered.
Yeah.
And an intense meeting was then organized between the executives of the PNC or APNU and the executive of the AFC.
Yeah.
And it was said at that meeting,
Yeah.
it was identified. There were, I think, 3 regions that were identified that they had strong evidence that rigging took place, and only a recount can bring that. And when the figures are recounted, you're going to see we got far more votes in these 3 regions. I think one of the regions were region 2, region 3, and 5.
Yeah.
And if you notice the pattern of the recount,
Yeah, I remember
those were the regions that were counted first.
I remember the rhetoric very clearly.
And so for me, as I said, when in an election you operate in a silo, and people who are in charge of that, you who are part of, even though you're part of the machinery, you have to trust those people. I can't come and trust you in the TCI. I can't call a PPP agent to trust them. I got to trust my people and their information.
Yeah.
So for me, I was ready and raring to go for a recount.
Yes.
Because I wanted the right figures. And if you have all this political experience and you're saying Region 3 got problems, Region 5 got problems, and Region 2 got problems, and if there is any deficit, because people like myself question the Mingo figures as well, and they're saying, no, hold on, if there's any deficit with the Mingo issue, these 3 regions are going to overcome any deficit that you questioning right now.
But you see this gaslighting
and so for me,
of your own people.
So for me, I'm ready and I'm raring to go because I want this recount. I want to see this recount.
Yeah.
And for me, I ain't looking back. I when I supporting my people and my group and whoever I'm working with, I ain't got no. I go in.
Yeah.
And that was my mentality and so on. So you talking about appearing in the press. Me, I ain't got none of that because I'm convinced that when this thing done, you're gonna see.
Of course,
whatever.
when the dust settles, you trust your executive, your senior executive.
Yeah. So
to be supplying the truth.
So I was in the recount center.
Yeah.
And then I was there. I was seeing the recount. I saw the ballots. I saw everything. And for me, when people were talking about Region 4 and Region this and that, for me, I just wanted to know what's happening in 2, 3 and 5, where they said these things are going to be manifested.
Yeah.
And when I did not see that, I became disillusioned.
Yes.
I became disappointed. My face was already out there.
I remember.
On the thing and so on. And says Gunraj, if he wants, he can confirm what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I had a talk with him and I said, Says, I really down on this. I shouldn't be talking to you about this because you in the opposition. Yeah. But me and you are right, we good.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that things ain't looking.
You see, God says Gunraj's name, but just tell me you want to call somebody's name. Call the name.
So I said that to him, and I said to him, look, I gonna take a little break off of this
sabbatical,
right? Yeah. And that is what I did.
Yeah.
I after that day, I could remember Says Gunraj is the last person I spoke to.
Yeah.
Before I walked out to that convention center, I walked out to that convention center, never returned. I didn't concern about Region 4,
Yeah.
Whatever problems Region 4 had, those were the problems. So that my disappointment did not come in Region 4. It came from Region 3, 2, and 5.
In finding out that what you were told by the senior executives that the APNU AFC were being cheated in 2, 3, and 5 to such a degree that whatever might have been going on in 4, in essence, they were saying, we might cheat in 4, but what the PPP doing 2, 3, and 5 is much worse.
Yeah.
But you found out 2, 3, and 5, there was no discrepancy or no significant discrepancy.
Right, to the extent that will affect the outcome
of the elections.
Right.
Yes, and it's a decent position to take. I mean, whenever I post something that you say, I mean, and this is something that is, for me, important in the larger political discourse in this country. When you post something, somebody will say, and it's not unreasonable to say, but I thought he was this and stuff like that. And I also have to say, Leno has done what is a fundamentally decent thing in that he's made an unequivocal mea culpa. He's done an unequivocal, I was wrong. So, for me, that is the barrier for entry into political discourse that will carry the country forward, wherever you come from, wherever you think. And I believe that, and it's clear, that the current leadership of both APNU and AFC, because they've sort of pigeonholed themselves into this grand lie, that they can't back off. So new leadership isn't new leadership and the theatrics of that. But even if you accept the theatrics, new leadership, whether it's Norton or Hughes, cannot be new leadership if it is that you're bringing the same old lie and you're not unequivocally saying either we were wrong institutionally or the former leadership was wrong.
So what is Hughes hoping to achieve? I mean, the baggage is there.
Oh no, so all right, so specifically to that, there's, and I keep saying that there's a campaigning as if 2015 to 2020 didn't exist to the AFC in terms of that they had a role in executive government. So what you have is this sort of absurd Kafkaesque campaign in which you have Hughes speaking as if he's bringing a new political culture. I call it the forward to the past campaign, in the sense that all the language says that we were never in government. If you listen to the rhetoric, we are here to bring change. I am here to bring change.
Better must come is their slogan.
Better must come, but 2015 to 2020.
When worse came onto them.
2015, 2012.
Better must come.
But you see, yeah.
I wrote consistently for the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Here and there about the AFC. And I've always said that the AFC I sometimes used to like to use euphemistic terms to say they're stars, but they're individual narcissists. And what you're seeing in the AFC and that better must come thing is a person's personal motto and not necessarily an AFC motto. Secondly, you notice there are attempts to change the AFC color. So the AFC constitution was never changed to change the color, its official colors. Which is the colors yellow. There is somebody that is infusing a new set of colors.
What are some of the colors?
AFC's official color is green and yellow.
And what they put in now?
You don't see blue and all kind of color appearing. These are personal, narcissistic imposition that the people are accepting, and it goes to the grander position that the AFC ethos flows out of. Basically, probably since its existence.
I also think that it's a conscious effort at just garden variety rebranding. You know, it's a company comes in, it does shit,
Watch your language.
So no. Well, this is the internet. This is it does fecal stuff, and so you have an oil company that is known for causing devastating fires and thing. And previously the logo was the sun, and so they changed it now because the rhetoric now is that we're going green. So they changed it to a leaf. Right? I think that's fundamentally it. I get your sense what you're saying, and I don't discredit what you're saying about the personal narcissism, but I also think that there's a deliberate recognition that there has to be a gaslighting of the population to believe that the AFC was not involved or not substantially involved in government from 2015 to 2020. There's no reference outside of the contortions coming out of your good friend Vincent Adams on the that they were functionally part of government. There's no representation of government policy from the perspective of the AFC from 2020 to 2020. There's no the AFC. It was an APNU AFC manifesto. Not a single person from the AFC, and to their credit from PNC as well, that says this was the APNU AFC David Granger plan in action.
Well,
it worked. This was our plan for 2015, 2020. We were cheated.
Well, you're so potently correct that potent is not the right word. You need a stronger word. David Granger runs a program called The Public Interest. No mention of anything 2015, 2020. Clive Thomas has a weekly column in the Star book. He never touched even remotely anything 2015, 2020. Nigel Hughes come on the scene, and you would believe this man was the chairman of a party that was in power, and he built his marijuana bill that he drafted and put on and it was put on the order paper in Parliament. The man went even just in passing. Also, by the way, I'm disappointed of what APNU and my own party did. Nothing. So you are right. Yeah. At a psychological level, these people don't believe that they were in government. Yeah, that doesn't exist in it.
They don't want us to remember that we were in government. And I when they were in government, I was pointing out, I made the observation to a couple of people in a small group, is that not only were people with a certain section of the society treating that administration as what I call an interregnum administration, but people in government themselves were treating it as an interregnum within a continuous rule of the PPP. I know I tend to use words, but an interregnum basically means a pause in a political history. Something that you know is temporary. Right? And so they treated us as some of them treated us as an interregnum. So there wasn't any focus on competence, but at the very top, again, there was an absence of vision, of policy vision. Again, you nobody can refer to the decade of democracy, and decade of democracy itself is an unoriginal term. That decade of development, that decade of development was the title that Burnham gave to his development plan when Guyana became a republic in 1970. So 1970 to 1980 was supposed to be in a decade of development. Granger saw that and said, okay, let me just use back the name. But unlike Burnham, I mean...
Well, Granger was the Burnham I see, but all those things Burnham did.
No, but I like to call Granger sort of beta Burnham in the sense that you had all the postures of Burnhamism, but none of the intellect. And Burnham failed terribly, precisely because of the reality of his undermining of democracy in Guyana. So that 1970, with all the aspirations, etc., collapsed, and until it culminated into, I think, the most significant event, which was the assassination of Rodney. That was sort of the crowning point of a disastrous, what Rodney called a reverse Midas touch for Barnum in the 19th. But you see, with Barnum, you had the very weak, but still valid excuse, Freddie, you know this, of the geopolitical realities of the time, the Cold War, etc. We didn't have that excuse now. We didn't have the excuse in 2020. And so we had a sort of a, when it comes to policy and vision, a sort of a low energy Burnhamism coming from Granger. Again, all the postures of the Burnham glory days, but none of the substance of it. And when that happened, and when it was clear from 2018, when they got the asses handed to them,
language, yeah, go on.
Their posteriors presented to them on a silver platter.
You the French one, their ear.
Their ears served to them as hors d'oeuvres. What you had was a predictable resorting to undermining the will of the electorate. I'll give you, I know time is coming, but I'll give you an anecdote.
You got 10 minutes.
That's instructive.
You got time.
One of your previous guests, a previous good friend of mine. I'll take the Leno rule here.
You just telling him my mistake, but why aren't you guys recording history?
Yeah.
You remind me of Quayano, a magistrate convicted Walter Rodney brother in a most shambolic trial, and Quayano writing a certain magistrate.
Yeah. But I'll say this, and I'll leave you out to guess, right? After the 2018...
A certain guest in this program said what?
No, after the 2018 local government elections, when an opposition, right, beat at a rate of more than 2-to-1 of them combined, because I think the APNU and AFC campaigned
separately.
Not as a campaign, but operated separately in the 2018 local government elections. The PPP, as an opposition, beat them 2-to-1 combined. The two of them combined didn't get half the votes of what the PPP got in the local government elections. This was
What's the point?
This was, if you are an incumbent and you're delivering services, your opposition, who you trounced after 20, was it the 20?
You're coming up to the name you don't want to call.
After 23-year incumbency, right? You beat them in 2015. 3 years later, you went to local government. They had no local government elections first. They competed with you. 3 years after, they beat you 2-to-1 in the local government elections. 2 years before national elections. That is an indicator, for me, that there is a shift in the public trust for you. So, I was in Oasis, and I ran into my friend, and I said,
who was a guest on this program?
And I said, Mr. Bond.
Why did they say 007?
are always election winners or determine that final vote count in Guyana, because Guyana politics is largely race-based and what have you. What moves the needle in politics in Guyana really is how people feel, your connection with people, how people feel, the confidence. I remember one guy, something Prasad was his name, an Indian guy, used to write strongly against Bharat Jagdeo, and he lived in New York. And then one day Jagdeo flew down there, and Jagdeo shook his hand and spoke to him directly. And he wrote in the newspaper that when I looked into Jagdeo's eyes, I saw sincerity. And from that day, he said, I will not condemn Jagdeo anymore. I believe in this Michelle Obama theory that they can only hate you from far off, not up close. And that is what the APNU AFC failed to do. They perch high and try to make policies. Sometimes some of the policies that are good for people sometimes start out as a bitter feeling. But you can't transform that bitter feeling or that slightly bitter taste in the mouth for something that is good for you into an acceptance, because you have not touched base with the people. You aren't giving people a chance to look into your eyes and be lost. You understand what I'm saying?
You aren't giving people a chance for them to mesmerize you.
Exactly.
I'll say two things in response to that. One, I think charm is the one who goes that far, right? And I'll give you one charm. Yeah. But it's just what policies, it's what impact people. So you had policies, but like the tax and data, for example, right? There was no rationale for that policy. In fact, every single global indicator with regard to the equitizing nature of access to information was against that policy. But what you had is a set of people who didn't like poor people, right? I remember TCI were going to Tiger Bay.
TCI, for our viewers, the
Citizenship Initiative.
Citizen Initiative, of which you were something.
So went into Tiger Bay, right? I remember, and I will say this clearly, I may not have championed the predictably failed decriminalization bill, but I went and used to smoke weed in a banner in Tiger Bay. And I remember them saying that for the years that Granger was in office, they never visited him once. This is a walk away, Tiger Bay, the press community. Not once, no kite cheering, no nothing, not in the theater.
I think he was a disaster in Caribbean history as a leader.
Yeah, but
I think he is the worst Caribbean leader.
It's a class issue, and it goes back to what I'm saying about the PNC having this sort of parasitic class that sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the party, but that controls the party effectively and convincingly, steps away when the fecal matter hits the oscillating thing. Now,
it's the fan.
Yes.
Oscillating thing.
with the shake hand thing, right? No amount of artificial baby hugging and so could convince somebody who is convinced that the policies are against you. They see it as artificial, particularly if the policies impact you. But to their credit, and remember nomination, I can remember clearly nomination day. We went there early, small parties, and I can say this personally as somebody who was lambasted, and up to that point as well, and beyond, the PPP. I don't think, outside of Freddie, my credentials of taking the PPP task can be questioned. And up to that point, I was still doing so. But I remember the coalitions had bullied their way in, Before somebody, right? Because people were there for it. We were there before them. It's not a bully the way then. I meant for us as a symbolic thing. Then PPP was there before.
Just their nature, man.
Right? And the coalition came out, all of them, and they kept their heads straight. Right? And at this point, I personally was embarrassing PPP more than them. I said, okay, the campaign has principal position against the PPP, but I have fundamental disagreements with how the coalition has. But I still had friends, supposed friends with it. Every single person walked by, not us, all these small parties kept their heads straight, like we didn't exist.
A minute remaining.
Directly after that, PPP came out, and the people that was lasting stopped from Jagdeo down. Irfan, has evolved at a civil relationship, more than civil, right? Shook our hands, so, and acknowledged that what we were doing, and acknowledged in that thing the principle of what we were doing, even though we were supposed to, and that's how politics should go. Now, in closing, and I want to return to this because it kind of got lost in the noise. SOPs, the statements of Paul, there's a history of that going back way down to the ballot back martyrs of 1973, in which there was a fight to preserve the will of the people in a document form. The SOPs represent that final document form. Anybody who is contesting elections and are not, one, presenting the SOPs if they were involved in the previous, in 2020, and saying, A, that who we have shows that we lost and we're sorry, or B, that we won and we were cheated, have no moral right contesting the election.
This election
coming up. And more importantly, neither Granger, Norton, Ramshatten, Hughes, or anybody in the leadership has once.
There got two Hughes. Which are we talking about? Nigeria?
Both Hughes. Has conceded, which everybody knows, that they legitimately lost the elections. They have not once done so. See, Granger come out and say some stupid.
But I writing a column with this Vincent Adams thing, and I asked Adams clearly.
So for me,
do you believe the election, the AP and UFC attempted to rig the election? But anyway.
No, but so my thing is this: every single guest that comes on here that purports to represent either APNU or FC, I think the question for them, this is not for partisan politics. This is for the fundamental trust in our democratic system. Do you believe that the Irfan Ali campaign won the elections?
That's it.
That's it.
Leno, you gotta go.
There was something I wanted to say on the Vincent Adams issue. But
I can ask him in a column if he believes the AP and you attempted to rig the election.
No, I want you to ask him on my behalf if he has ever written any word of policy concerning oil and gas in Guyana. And if he has them in his back pocket, when will we?
Well, I will ask about, but I will use actually we got in his back pocket.
Probably same time you see the SOP.
Ruel Johnson, thanks once again for coming here.
Anytime, man. It's long vision.
Right, and we'll have you again on the election coming up. We can have you several times there. Okay. Then I'll see you on Wednesday again.
Yeah.
We were just rapping among ourselves as we did the past 4 editions, looking back at 2024, the co-host and I, with one of our colleagues, no guest. We probably will have a guest on Wednesday. On behalf of Ruel Johnson, Leonard Craig, and our operator,